Thanks, Nancy. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I put the icebreaker in the chat, but if we could go ahead and do some introductions, we're going to have you put your name, your hub or organization, and then our icebreaker is if you had 1 extra hour of time in the day, how would you use it? Let's see, we have Jordan, the Child Care and Development Fund Administrator and Preschool Development Grant Project Director at DELC. Basically, I work on all things federal funding and policy. If I had 1 extra hour of free time every day, I think I would sleep. I have an 18-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, so I'm always tired. That makes sense, Jordan. I think sleep was probably my choice as well, or reading. So those are good ones. Next, we have Rod from Eastern Oregon, Early Learning Hub, an extra hour. I would sleep. I don't get enough sleep. I feel like we're going to have a lot of sleep choices here. Chris from the Early Childhood of Lane County, 1 extra hour working in my garden, talking to the birds. Oh, that's a good one, Chris. And then we have Vanessa from Marion Polk Early Learning Hub, hanging out with my kiddos. I feel like that's a great one. It feels like the evenings go so quick, so just some extra time with family is always great. Next, we have Patty from Frontier Early Learning Hub. If I had an extra hour a day, I would talk to my grandkids a little more. Oh, Patty, that's great. I'll do a couple more. Smirla Ramos Montañez, Director of Early Learning Multnomah. I would use the extra hour for sleep. Alicia from South Central Early Learning Hub, a nap or extra time with my kiddo. And then we have Jessica Porter from South Coast Regional Early Learning Hub, sleep. So thank you for that. Feel free to continue to read those in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Nancy to move us through the agenda.
Thanks, Maria. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started with Jordan and Gabby on a PDG update. Jordan, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks so much, Nancy. And again, thank you for the music starting this meeting. That was fantastic to come into. Hello, everybody. I put in the chat as well, but I don't typically come to these meetings, so it's really nice to see all of you. My name is Jordan Pargetter, and I work here at DELC as our Child Care and Development Fund Administrator, but I also am the Preschool Development Grant Project Director. So everything to do with federal funding and policies that are around that. And today I just wanted to come and share a little bit about our preschool development grant or PDG, kind of progress that we've made since being awarded funds in late December. So you can see here there are some presentation purposes that we kind of want to go through. We really want to talk about what PDG is and kind of share like what we are doing with these federal dollars and kind of what was proposed within our application. And then highlighting really how our PDG funds will contribute over to Raise Up Oregon and some of the updates going on there, and then collect any questions and feedback that you have. So we have a guiding question there to think about as we're kind of going through, really thinking through, which of these activities do you want to learn more about? And then also, where do you see the strongest connection to hubs in your work? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we continue. Thanks, Kate. So like I mentioned, the Department of Early Learning and Care did receive about $7.3 million for the Preschool Development Grant Birth to Five funding opportunity on December 31st. And I think we'll go through a little bit more detail on the next slide, but these funds are really meant for systems building and alignment across our agency and even outside of it within the early childhood space, focusing predominantly on birth to five, but obviously any initiatives that assist school agers is also great. The project period, it really goes for the calendar year of 2026. So for those of you who have been involved or followed any of the PDG opportunities in the past, this is different than what those were. Previously, they had been really like planning grants and research grants and sometimes multi-year. This year, it really is just a 1-year competitive grant. And what we've heard from our federal partners at the Administration for Children and Families is that at least for the next 3 years, they anticipate annual competitive grants based on available funding. We can go to the next slide. Oh, I thought I had one in between there. No, that's maybe not. Okay.
There are some additional slides that in the recap that will have more information
Okay.
around what is PDG, and then we're, for the purposes of this meeting, we'll go through the details of the different activities.
Thanks, Kate. I forgot which ones we decided to have in the presentation. I do want to kind of just provide an overview, though, around kind of PDG in general. And we're really here to gather feedback, but also really want to acknowledge that this application period was very short. We had 8 days to get our application in from when it was originally posted. This was a funding opportunity that we weren't sure was going to happen, and it kept being delayed. PDG funding wasn't included in like the recommended presidential budget. So the fact that we got funding for it and that it was able to be awarded in November was sort of a surprise. So I just want to call that out because we didn't really have a huge opportunity to do a ton of engagement as we were applying for these funds and really drafting our 75-page application. But that's also why we want to make sure that we're doing robust engagement now and that these activities, any way that they might map to your work regionally, is going to be really important. And also, for the future of potential PDG rounds where we can really gather ideas to add to our applications for future years. So I just wanted to kind of provide that overview there. And then we can jump into the activities. So the application that we submitted is made up of 3 what they call critical elements. This is the federal framework. These are things that we needed to speak to. And again, the intent of PDG really was to focus on systems building and alignment. And so the first critical element was around our statewide ECE needs assessment and strategic plan. For the context here, that would be Raise Up Oregon as a statewide early childhood strategic plan or a portion of it. So in this part of the proposal, we included 2 activities with a couple sub-activities as well. So the first one is that we're planning to update our needs assessment to understand shifts within our early childhood education system. We are hoping to update our statewide household survey and get parent voice and family voice, and then also are working to update and improve ELMO, or the Early Learning Map of Oregon. The second piece here is called Developing a Shared Comprehensive Vision for Early Care and Education by updating our existing strategic plan, Raise Up Oregon. And that is really focused on making sure that we're able to update Raise Up Oregon and the pieces that talk about early childhood to what's reflective today. And I think Gabby will go into a little bit more detail on that one in a few minutes. Or now.
Yeah, my turn. Hey everyone, good to be here with this group. I know Jordan mentioned just kind of the quick turnaround time that we had to really just kind of apply for the application. So this really is just a preliminary kind of what we're thinking in terms of Raise Up Oregon. This is not going to be the only time that I join this group. I'm actually hoping to join again in the spring just to actually get feedback from you all in terms of what we're really looking to do with Raise Up Oregon. So essentially with updating the statewide strategic plan, in this case, Raise Up Oregon, the real purpose behind updating the plan, and it really was kind of just because we had the opportunity to do so with PDG, is to compress and actually clarify some existing content that's currently in the plan while still maintaining those core priorities and commitments. What do we mean by that? The reason for this change really is, I want to say kind of 2 core things, though I did add new leadership on there. Though this wasn't really a deciding factor, but I do want to preface that when Raise Up Oregon was first released, we had different leadership in 3 out of the 6 partner state agencies. We currently have new leadership within the Oregon Health Authority, the Oregon Department of Human Services, and ODE, the Department of Education. In addition, there's been, budget and federal changes. So we really do want to preface that. I actually connect with the Raise Up Oregon action team, or like the state partners, and it's been pretty difficult to actually kind of pinpoint and track progress on the plan right now, just because one, it's so big, and for a lot of these agencies, they are actually in the process of also updating their own agency strategic plans, given these budget cuts, given the federal changes. So really the goal here is to update the plan, I think actually make it shorter, and really kind of just reflect some of the current realities and constraints that we've seen since the plan was released. But we do still want to maintain that strong statewide vision. I do want to preface that just because I do think the plan is so big does not mean that the work that we put into the plan is not happening. A lot of that work is still going on. We're really just focusing on, I think, really trying to compress it and improve tracking moving forward, while also acknowledging that some of the things that we did put into the plan did shift given some of the budget and federal changes. I think I have one more slide. This is essentially really kind of just like a draft timeline for the plan to really update Raise Up Oregon. So I really wanted to share that with you all. So essentially, my first stop is going to be working with our agency partners to really kind of discuss and share the process of what we want to bring to our external partners with a proposed updated plan. So that's going to happen next month. I'm really excited for that. And then in the spring through about the summer, hoping to come back to this group, really just kind of share more in detail in terms of what our agency partners are saying, what their directors are saying, kind of present I don't want to say a final proposed plan, because the point is to engage with you all and also get feedback, just to make sure that whatever we're updating and compressing still relates to the work that y'all are doing, and making sure that there's nothing missing. So I'll be doing some engagement in a lot of our external partners, this group included, in the spring through the summer. In July or later summer, hoping to just bring feedback back to the Raise Up Oregon action team. And then essentially, I think circle back. What you won't see on here is I will be coming back just to kind of share some of those final edits as well in the summer with the same groups that engaged in feedback. And then we'll submit the final plan to our comms team to really update it, with the plan to essentially relaunch the updated plan in the fall of this year.
Thank you so much, Gabby. So that concludes critical element 1. There are 2 other critical elements within our sort of overarching proposal and what we intend to do with these funds. The second critical element is probably the bulk of the application, and this is really focused on outcome strategies. So kind of what are ways that we can help to advance the priorities that are happening within our programs by creating more alignment and unification. So there's 3 categories: reconciling fragmented elements into a unified system, expanding program availability and sustainability, and then aligning and sharing information and data systems. And we'll go into kind of what the activities look like within those 3 categories. So the first one here, under reconciling fragmented elements into a unified system, we have a fairly large activity that's really focused on strengthening our grant and aid administration, and just making sure that we have a more unified and clear pathway for grantees. There's a variety of different sub-activities within here that we're working to kind of sort out what that will look like going forward. But really, I mean, everything within this list is meant to just increase our overall program and fiscal integrity systems, and making sure that what's expected of grantees is clear. So that's the main kind of push behind that. We can go to the next one. The next one here is where I see personally a lot of overlap with the hubs, but it's around maximizing parent choice across program options, and really utilizing consumer education and marketing. Consumer education is a federal term that's used, but essentially just really trying to make sure that our communication with families is clear, simple, easy to navigate, And so we have a variety of different strategies that we're hoping to engage with others on, and different sub-activities that we've listed here. The first two actually kind of go together, around really doing some robust community engagement and evaluating how our systems work already and how they're working for families. And then using some of that engagement to develop what we've been calling a self-screening eligibility tool, but I just recently heard that maybe that would be confusing, given like developmental screenings and things like that. So really working to create some sort of resource for families where they can learn about the different publicly available programs and also do some sort of easy to understand, like eligibility pre-check or something. So we've been working kind of to see what vendors are available. I know South Coast has a pretty cool self-screening tool that we took a look at, but really trying to just simplify families' experience with that. The third one here is a childcare awareness campaign. And this really is just, trying to bolster awareness of like licensed and regulated childcare, the fact that, for example, Find Childcare Oregon exists, really just trying to help families get more connected who maybe don't already access or are aware of the system. So there's kind of some thoughts around like short form videos and different sort of marketing materials that could go out with that. The next one here, advancing a family-centered system of early learning supports for providers, is really focused on our Spark redesign and like re-evaluating what quality is based on what we've already done through our Spark redesign work. Then we have sort of four here that are really focused on some of the priorities that are within the Early Learning Council, but also just things that we've committed to in the past and haven't been able to kind of finish up with available funding. So one here is really looking at reducing local zoning and planning obstacles to develop childcare across Oregon and ways that we can engage with providers so they understand the zoning process. Another one is really around the idea of utilizing childcare coalitions to recruit business leaders and local strategies developing childcare. The next one is around really looking at what the cost of childcare is. We have a cost estimation model in Oregon, and we did conduct a study, but it's several years old. And so really trying to take funding to be able to update that so that we have a better idea of the cost of care and overall what supporting the system would look like. And then lastly, a comparative study between 2019 to present, following up on House Bill 2346, which had a variety of different work groups and recommendations that had been completed back in 2019, kind of demonstrating the goals that folks on those work groups had for Oregon in terms of expanding childcare access and affordability. So really just looking at what those recommendations were and then seeing what all DELC has been able to accomplish or ELD has been able to accomplish or partners have been able to accomplish and sort of where we're at now. The next piece here is around optimizing infrastructure to support provider success, build supply, and expand parent choice. And this really is focusing on modernization of some of our trainings and some of our just materials that we have available. So we're hoping to contract to be able to provide some business startup training modules like short form videos to be able to modernize our existing childcare provider introduction trainings so that they're cohesive and easy to access. And then we're also doing some work on really looking at what it would take to stand up a new learning management system for the training materials to live in terms of training credits. And then lastly, this piece here, evaluating and strengthening early learning program access in rural Oregon, is really around making sure that we have targeted pathways for those in rural areas, but specifically within tribal governments, working to create memorandums of understanding where we can support tribes as they are also trying to stand up their own provider businesses.
Jordan, we have one comment in the chat from the previous slide. Do you want to just take these at the end, or do you want to take them as we go?
I can take them as we go. That's fine.
Okay.
There may be subject matter experts or sub-activity leads that like I may not have the answer right here. But happy to take any questions as they come along.
Yeah, this is just a comment from Evan about the zoning piece. And he said zoning may be less of an issue than permitting if there's an opportunity to fold that in somehow. Maybe
Mhm.
that falls under planning.
Yeah, I think that's a really important call out. And we are in kind of some discussions to see building on what DCLD already started and housing to kind of see if we can build upon what's already existing. So I think that's really important to consider. I don't know, Gabby, if you had more to say on that.
Yeah, I was just gonna also chime in, because Jordan, I know in the last slide you also mentioned that some of the sub-activities were kind of leading into what council had prioritized. I do just want to preface for folks that when we mean priority for council, it's really rare whenever there's actually like funding tied to a council priority. It just so happens that with this PDG opportunity, we were able to loop in just some things that were previously surfaced at council meetings. So to Evan's comment around zoning, part of the reason why we included that into PDG is back on October 2nd, DLCD joined the council meeting just to kind of give them an update on the House Bill 2727 report that listed out a lot of recommendations for agencies, some legislative recommendations as well. So that's where that one is coming from, and do appreciate you just surfacing that, Evan. Right now, we're in conversations with DLCD about recommendations from that report and using PDG funding to get some of that done within this year. And happy to kind of share more once Jordan's done going through that, because there's essentially 3 activities that I'm monitoring for council. It's the Raise Up Oregon one, the Land and Zoning Use one, and then the Child Care Business Coalition one. I'll throw that in the chat, but happy to answer more questions, but just wanted to add that in as well. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you. And I just put a comment in the chat as well for some of the other comments that were put in there, just that I'll be connecting with our activity leads, just to make sure that those business accelerator trainings are kind of part of this process and considered as we're moving forward. Okay. This next activity is around using technology to improve enrollment and support childcare businesses. So really on the business front, really helping to address childcare management systems and looking at how we can utilize those to streamline enrollment and provide that business support to providers and programs. So we have a couple of different sub-activities here. One of them is really around looking at the technological landscape and figuring out a statewide strategy that includes childcare management systems, but also just technology more broadly. As many of you know, we're launching our own early learning management system in the summer, and so kind of folding that in as well and looking at what our overarching kind of plan would be for all these different types of technology in a changing world. And then we also have a sub-activity that's focused on piloting childcare management systems with a select group of providers and building on the shared services pilot that's already existed. The next one here is in category 3, and it's building a unified early learning data system to improve coordination and decision making. So essentially really focusing on data governance and data capacity. So really coming through, we've been utilizing Snowflake as sort of a larger space to hold all of our data and be able to analyze it in one place. And so within that framework, these sub-activities really involve our research and research analytics and data team to help them to integrate and align data across programs in order to better evaluate, building capacity for our data use. And again, like I said, data governance, and then developing tools for, as close to we can, real-time and longitudinal analysis where we can get a better picture of what's happening in real time versus in, past years. The last piece of this really is just something that we had to speak to within the grant, but it's around documenting project progress, results, and outcomes. And that's just what we have to report back to our federal partners about what's been done, but also is going to be critical in terms of holding ourselves accountable of how we've spent these dollars and the impacts that they've made across the state.
All right, thank you, Jordan and Gabby, for that overview. In just a moment, there will be a chance to ask Jordan and Gabby some questions. But before we get to that, we're going to do a little Mentimeter activity to collect your feedback. If you're not familiar with Mentimeter, it's an online engagement tool. And so to participate, you can either go to menti.com and enter the code there that's on the screen. Karina also just dropped in the chat a direct link that will take you there. Or if you prefer to participate on your phone, you can scan the QR code. Once you're logged in, you can start to answer the first question, but I'll wait a moment for everyone to get logged in and then I'll switch screens in just a moment. Okay, I'm going to switch my screen, but the code will show up again. So just one moment while I transition. Okay, the first question is what PDG activities do you want to learn more about, or where do you see the strongest connections to hubs? I know the text is a little small on the screen, but I will, when the responses slow down, I'll read out the responses we get. All right, I'm starting to see the responses slowing down. So it looks like so far we have 11 responses for update ECE needs assessment, improve Elmo, update Raise Up Oregon. There are 4 responses for strengthening DELC's grant and aid administration. Oh, looks like another one for the first one on updating ECE needs assessment, improving Elmo, and update Raise Up Oregon. There were 9 responses for community engagement, plus human-centered design, ECE resource page, plus self-screening eligibility tool, and the child care awareness campaign. 6 responses for recruiting business leaders and local strategies developing childcare. 12 responses for advancing a family-centered system of supports for providers. 10 responses for optimizing infrastructure to support provider success, build supply, expand parent choice, and evaluate and strengthen rural program access. 4 responses for using technology to improve enrollment and support childcare businesses, and then 10 responses for building a unified early learning data system. In just a moment on the next slide, we're going to have a slide where you can submit questions you have about PDG. But before we get to that, I just wanted to pause and see if anyone wanted to unmute and expand on the selections that you chose. Okay, I'm not seeing any. I will say that Mentimeter, when we receive responses, we don't get your names attached to them. So if there is a particular activity that you really want to learn more about, I would encourage you in today's meeting exit survey to name that, but include your name so that the DELC team is aware. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So now through the Mentimeter, you can start entering questions that you have, but you're of course invited to come off mute if you would prefer to answer or to ask a question that way. And then Jordan and Gabby can help answer questions that come through. Some of these questions we might not be able to answer right away, but Delk team, if there are any that you do know the answer to, feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Kate. I wasn't sure if I should wait for more questions to come through. But I think, I'm seeing some themes really around how are we going to engage various partners? And I think that's part of what we're starting now. We've already gone to like our early learning advocacy meetings. We've presented to council. We're coming here. We're also hoping to engage with our CCR and our partners. And every one of these activities has specific leads that also, they have their own work plans in terms of their engagement and what they want to do in order to be able to gain as much feedback as possible. And then I'm looking to see others that are kind of outside of that theme. It is a lot of work and there is not a lot of time to do it. You're right. We do have a timeline, and I'm happy to also share our application so that that way you can take a look at that. There are some things that, this was what we had proposed initially, and they're kind of narrowing in scope about what's tangibly able to be done, especially as we learn about existing things that are going on. But that might be helpful in terms of just being able to take a look and read over that for yourself. There is a timeline in there for each activity as well. Most of these activities are planned to be done through contract. And so we're putting up in Oregon Buys requests for quotes and a couple of requests for proposals as well. So you can also take a look there. I know that there are some that I'm sure hubs may be well positioned to apply for. So I would take a look at Oregon Buys. Things are kind of coming up gradually as teams have been building out sort of the scopes of work of what would be needed for each of these activities. And then I'll enter in the chat our application, and then I'm sure we can also send out a copy after the fact. We're working to get it on our website. We're kind of realizing we have to redo our website as well because it's got a lot of content on there from past years and it's a little confusing. But here is the link to the application in the chat. If you'd like to take a look, it has a lot more detail kind of around each of those activities.
Jordan, I'm seeing a couple of questions that you might be able to answer here, or someone on the team. One, how does Delk, oh, wait a minute, no, what is the new early learning management system that will be launched? And then I thought also hubs are well positioned to support consumer education, but will Delk design any specific messages or content?
Yeah, so first question, the early learning management system is a new system that's being launched this summer, and I know there's going to be a lot of engagement that happens around this, so I apologize if it hasn't been well messaged thus far. But essentially, this is a new system that will allow the combination of licensing and subsidy into one place. And so instead of operating within, old, outdated systems. We're building something new where providers can build a provider profile and really be able to look at all of their subsidy eligible children and also their licensing status in, like I mentioned, the same place. So there'll be more information to come out, and I'm by no means the expert on the system. So we'll for sure have to make sure that we have those subject matter experts come and present to you about what that will look like. And I believe in the spring, or I guess it's almost spring now, but later in the spring, there's communication and engagement that's planned. And then the other one, yes, hubs are well positioned to support consumer education. And that's part of, I think, what we're hoping to do here. We obviously don't want to encroach on any regional efforts that are happening around consumer education and family voice, but also want to provide some statewide resources that you could utilize within your local areas if you choose to. And that would come kind of from DELC as well, to try to, connect with families that maybe aren't within the system or aren't engaged in whatever ways already exist. So we definitely want to work with you as we're developing these things. And I know that some of that community engagement and human-centered design piece will involve hubs and CCR&Rs very intently to make sure that we're not recreating the wheel, and also that we can gather information that already exists and provide, just consistent statewide tools as well. So it's a supplement, not a replacement for anything that already exists. Okay. Who should you direct questions to? You can direct them to me, or if you want to direct them to Nancy and Maria, and they can also send them my way. I'll put my contact information in the chat as well, so that way you can reach out directly. But yes, also you can reach out to Nancy and Maria, and we'll make sure to capture that information.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a question just around the cadence for the hubs to provide insight and feedback to the council. I guess I wanted just a little bit of clarity from, and feel free to submit a supplement, or if someone could just kind of provide some additional context to it. Just because the council is really, I guess, just kind of, I don't even want to say overseeing, but I think there's really just 3 activities that fall within what their focus is for the year. And it's the Raise Up Oregon update, the childcare business engagement one, and the land and zoning use one. And that's something that I'm still working out in terms of engagement. The land and zoning use one, I've been having conversations with OHCS and DLCD just to kind of discuss timelines, funding, and realistic goals on that sense. Whereas the Raise Up Oregon sub-activity and the childcare business engagement one, a request for quote was already posted on Oregon Buys. So those 2 are kind of already, have already, I don't want to say kicked off, but like the process has started. Whereas I'm still kind of waiting on just more info from DLCD and OHCS on the land and zoning use one. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, like, are you referring to like hub providing insight and feedback to the council related to PDG, or just generally? Okay, I see that, related to PDG and their interests. Yeah, so for this March meeting, I am planning on just updating the council in terms of kind of where we're at now with these 3 sub-activities, and hoping to just have some routine updates as the work progresses around those sub-activities. I think more to come in terms of how we update them on PDG entirely. I'm just solely focusing, because I know that their focus areas within the year do fall within those 3, though they have lots of interest in other areas of the plan as well. That's essentially, those 3 sub-activities are what I'm prioritizing at the moment. And no, we haven't really fine-tuned any engagement for the broader plan as is. And I'm hoping that that answers your question.
For the recording, I just wanted to read Jordan's chat regarding statewide local supports. It is both. Some activities are focused on providing statewide supports like consumer education, where others are focused on providing tools to support local efforts. More information in the application. And thanks, Jordan, for putting your email in the chat.
I think I also want to speak to one of the questions here that says Delk has a tendency to outsource a lot of work, then the contract ends and expertise and ownership leaves. How will a handoff happen to ensure these initiatives outlast a subcontract? So I would encourage you to read through the application because we actually have a section that we had to speak to that around sort of how will this work be able to be successful with a short timeline. And really, each one of these are smaller, more tangible activities where we're hoping that they um, are things that we can actually accomplish within this year. But also, I think that in many cases they're the first step towards future efforts. And so, fiscal year 26 PDG funding was approved through Congress. We're not 100% sure how that will look, but from what we've heard from our federal partners, it sounds like they will continue to be 1 year competitive grants. And so that's part of, I think, potentially the strategy would be that some of these things might just start the process and then we can apply for future years funding to be able to continue that work forward. But also, if we, for some reason, don't receive that funding, these are things that were already, through DELC at least, partially in motion. They just lacked the resources to be able to do them. So that's sort of sort of an answer, and I know it's not probably enough. And I would be really curious if you have specific initiatives that you're curious about or concerned about. We can talk about that further because each one obviously has a variety of different nuances involved and ownership there. As far as like outsourcing and contracting, a lot of that's like consultation and facilitation pieces. There's some that will be like work creation, but we're really hoping that any tangible products that are created are things that we can build on and have editing access to in the future to be able to adapt to needs throughout the years.
Jordan, I'm seeing another question. I appreciate the short timeline, but curious why hubs in the work for the system were not more explicitly called out or supported in this application. And I know that may have something to do with the application, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I saw that one. And I'd be really curious about kind of more detail of what you're looking for there. Um, the application itself had pretty strict requirements of what we needed to speak to. And we really needed to align to what the preschool development grant goals were. And there's a scoring metric and all of that. So certainly, as we are going forward, the application was just the first step to be able to secure funding. How the funds are actually dispersed and how those activities roll out are things that we do really hope to partner with others on, including the hubs, and really work on that system building together within local regions and statewide, like I was mentioning in the chat. So if there are areas where you have concern within the application, please share that, and we'll make sure too that we're engaging and reaching out. In this situation, yeah, it was just a really short timeline. We had a list of priorities after meeting with various DELC offices, including our CCR&R and hub partners internally within DELC that are partnering with you. But certainly we want to make sure that we're continuing to engage and gather feedback and that we're doing so in a transparent manner.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that. I think the only other one that we haven't touched on is the bottom right one. How will answers or follow-up be brought to this group? I think we probably need to talk about that, but I'm wondering what your thinking is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably be good for us to compile responses to these things. I don't know if it'd be helpful to have things in writing so you can refer back to them. I'm also happy to come back in the future if that's preferred, to kind of talk through or provide progress updates. And then also, we have activity leads that are more the subject matter experts in each area within DELC that are partnering with various partners, You know what I mean? And so they can also return and kind of share updates as things are moving, particularly as, vendors are selected and as we're actually able to see some of the progress that's being made on each of these sub-activities. So I guess it's up to you, however, would be preferred to have those answers provided or to ask additional questions.
That's great, Jordan. Thank you. And just wanting to open up, we've got 3 minutes left. Does anybody just want to unmute and ask a question or comment? Oh, we've got Jordan and Gabby here. No, I don't think so. Want to thank you, Jordan and Gabby, for coming here and sharing your updates and answering questions. It's really appreciated. I really like the idea of bringing the questions to you and the team, the PDG team, to get responses so that everybody can kind of have the same information. It's a great idea. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And like I mentioned, I don't typically come to these meetings, but I'm like, oh man, this is great. I should. So it's just great to see all of you and hear your thoughts. This is really helpful. So thank you so much for your partnership.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate your time. And Gabby, I think you're up next to talk about the home visiting committee.
Yes, and I have just 3 slides that I want to share with the group just to kind of walk through and share some additional information. I think it was last month that I joined this group just to kind of give a heads up that there is a vacancy on the council's home visiting system subcommittee. For folks who don't know, the council only has one standing subcommittee, and it is the home visiting committee. The Coves actually helps facilitate that, and Peg Miller and Peter Buckley are the co-chairs for that subcommittee. The home visiting committee meets just about every other month for 90 minutes, and really kind of just wanted to share that this opportunity is open, given that I believe Jillian used to be on the committee, and Peg and Peter and Coves have been very vocal about still wanting hub representation. So I wanted to really kind of just share the timeline and essentially the meeting schedule for both the home visiting committee and the home visiting action network. For anybody who's interested in applying or serving as the hub representative on the committee, I do want to preface that there is an expectation to actually attend both of these meetings, with essentially really wanting whoever's appointed to join the May 28th home visiting committee for the first time. So looking at the schedule for the after May, it's essentially 3 meetings that you'll join. I want to say it's about 6 meetings a year. And then Rebecca, who oversees the planning, actually sends like scheduling polls for the home visiting action network committees and prioritizes committee members' availability to ensure that we can get the most folks there at the action network. So that hence that little star just to kind of note when we'd be hoping for hub directors to join or the hub representee to join. Also really kind of just wanted to share what the home visiting committee is. It champions home visiting and home visiting system improvement. It prioritizes providing leadership to ensure adequate funding and resources for the home visiting system. So members advocate within the committee and elsewhere within their areas of influence for just advancement of home visiting priorities. And also just wanted to jot down what a hub director member's role on the committee would be. Essentially, your role would be to represent hub director's perspective in all home visiting committee meetings and communicate with hub directors around their priorities and initiatives. Tying this back to council meetings, we do have 3 kind of home visiting focused early learning council meetings scheduled for this year. The first one being actually this month on March 18th. The next one being in May, and I believe we have one in December. And that was intentional. We really wanted to really relink because we haven't really heard in the main council meetings some of the work that the home visiting committee is doing. So we want there to be just kind of frequent updates. So there may be opportunity to participate in those council meetings as well. And then I have just one more slide, and then I'm happy to really kind of just answer questions. For anybody interested in applying, I do have a deadline of just April 15th. It's a pretty informal process. We're really just hoping for an email to me answering these 4 questions. We are in the process of establishing bylaws for this committee and really kind of just sharing more information. So with that being said, I currently do not have a set time for serving on the committee. I jokingly wanted to say that if you're in it, you're going to be in it forever, but that is not the case. I can definitely circle back with folks and let you know once we essentially get those bylaws really adopted. Our goal is to actually bring them to the May meeting and really just kind of establish some of these standard procedures, because on the home visiting committee and the home visiting action network, it's really wide range of attendance. We have cross-system partners from OHA, ODHS, and DELC participating. So really a wide range of participants. But did just want to preface that because I think that's really the biggest part that's unclear in terms of how long you'd be serving. But happy to be flexible with folks and really just kind of figure that out here in the next couple months. So tentative, but happy to answer more questions. Oh, Danny, I can get the times from Rebecca and circle back with this group. I'll email her once I'm done presenting here and then add those to my slides so that Maria and Nancy can send those out with you. I think it's from 1 to 2:30 though, but I will confirm for everyone. Yeah, Evan.
I was just gonna say, I think I've already said that I was willing, and we talked about the Hub Association, and I think I was one of the main folks who voiced interest at that meeting, but it's gonna come down to details of like whether those meeting times can have any kind of accord with my schedule, right? I think because if you guys are wanting, if the expectation is consistent attendance at multiple meetings versus, then if I've got other stuff that I can't move, that's going to be an impediment. I think some of the folks on this call know I'm sitting in as a branch manager for our public health division now. So like my plate is getting more full, but it's also encompassing all the nurse home visiting and healthy families now. So it's like there's more of an impetus to be on that committee. At the same time, I have less capacity to serve on said committee.
Okay. No, thanks, Evan. I appreciate that. And I will circle back with Rebecca as well, just because initially I was trying to say if really a hub director can really essentially prioritize just attending the main home visiting committees. And she actually responded back saying it'd be great to have attendance in all of them. I'll see how flexible it is and see if it's really more so of just really prioritizing the home visiting committees and then the action networks when available, because I do know, everyone on this call schedules are really busy. Adding another 6 meetings can be a lot. So I can circle back and share more details with you all. And I do want to preface that just depending on like anybody who has interest. Evan, I know you mentioned the association. I don't know if you all want to have just kind of like a joint decision on who is representative of you all. Otherwise, I was just going to pass along names of interest to both Peg and Peter, and then just really have them decide who they would like to appoint so that we can notify them by May 1st. And then, get the meeting holds on whoever is selected's calendar, just kind of moving forward. But I will definitely circle back with this group just in terms on really prioritizing home visiting committees and the home visiting action networks, really kind of narrowing down attendance, and then come back and confirm the times. So I'll have that modified and adjusted on the slides you see here so that Maria and Nancy can send those out to folks this week.
Any other questions for Gabby? Okay, I see Danny writes, our first nominee is Evan. If that doesn't work, the association will find another volunteer to put forward. Thank you. Great, thanks, Danny. All right, I think with that, we can move to our next agenda item unless we've got any other questions for Gabby. All right, thank you, Gabby. And let's invite Heidi to join us.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Nancy.
Hi. I will hand it over to you, Heidi. Thank you.
Good to see you all. Well, we're here talking about the hub system review. I have a set of slides that we'll walk through with you to talk about some of the themes from the listening sessions that I held this last month with governance chairs. I think I held 4 on February 17th and February 18th. And so wanted to share with you what I heard, what the primary themes that we heard. And I just want to check in that with you all that when we talk about these listening sessions, this won't be our last conversation. We really want your immediate responses in case there are considerations that you think are really important for us to have when we think about how to incorporate these themes and bring them back to you with a draft in April. So this is part of an ongoing process. And just want to also remind you that just because we hear some of these themes emerge, it doesn't mean it'll be included in the final product. And I think that's understandable, but just want to call that out. So let's do a walkthrough of the slides. We'll kind of pause, and then at the end of walking through the themes, we'll take time to check in with you, see what questions you have. There's some guiding questions to consider, such as what wows or wonderings do you have after hearing the themes? What themes are unclear that you'd like a little clarification on? And what considerations we should be taking into account when integrating feedback into the draft review and the backbone change process. So that's what our plan is for today. How's that sound for y'all? Awesome. All right. Thanks for the thumbs up. Appreciate it. And the head nods. Kate, you've got the slides right here. Right on. Here we go. So last time I was with you, I shared with you the questions that we were going to be asking. I think I emailed that to you as well when I emailed the Governance Council chairs. So the first question is, what are the qualities of a governance council that support a successful early learning hub? And I heard first and quickly, it has to have cross-sector and broad representation. And want the cross-sector and broad representatives to have a deep connection to the community and have a passion for early childhood. Other qualities are that a hub has engaged and working committees, such as an executive committee and an involved parent leadership committee. And that the hub conducts its own due diligence, such as fiscal responsibilities and updating the bylaws. Heard a lot about clarity of roles and responsibilities, in particular, clarity of roles and responsibilities between the backbone, the governance council, and the hub director, including the role of governance council in hiring the hub director. Also heard how important it is to have a partnership and strong and clear communication with the backbone, with hub director, with partners, and with a community. The next question that I asked were, what are the qualities of a backbone that support a successful early learning hub? We've got a couple slides for this one. The first one is budget transparency, and that the backbone provides support and clarity for the governance council to understand the funds, where the funds are expended, including staffing and positions. And that the backbone is responsive to the governance council questions to support decision-making, as opposed to the backbone making decisions on their own. I heard flexibility within the backbone, where the backbone works to accommodate the needs of the hub rather than requiring the hub decisions to fit within the backbone processes. and the capacity of the backbone, such as that they can float funds and have internal resources like human resources, fiscal sophistication to manage the complex funding streams. And the other themes that I heard about the qualities of a backbone are alignment of mission, vision, and values, including that the backbone holds a mission to serve early childhood. I also heard that the backbone brings their own expertise and leverages additional resources. And with that, sees the governance council members as experts and seeks to partner with them as experts in early childhood and in their respective fields. And as I mentioned, that the backbone seeks to leverage additional resources. And then again here, heard clear roles, responsibilities, systems, and expectations. So clarity around all those, is in particular around clearly defined roles for who makes decisions and who makes financial decisions and how those decisions get made. And the
Heidi,
third
can I jump
question,
in for one
yeah,
second? 'Cause I just realized I think, and you might have already said this, but I just want to make sure
Yeah.
everybody, when we just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to, that we get through all of these, you have a chance to hear them. But then when we have our discussion, we can pop back to each one and make sure that you have it fresh in front of you in case you have, specific feedback or wonderings or question, about one of these specific questions. So I know that we know this is a lot to take in, but then we'll just do like a once through and make sure that you have received Heidi's overview of everything, and then we'll dive into them individually and try to have time to get through again.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Heidi.
Becky. Thank you. We can certainly circle back and pop these back up. Okay. Question 3 was, how does the backbone support the governance council's ability to make decisions and implement actions? And I heard 3 primary things. One is clarity and transparency of budget. That if the backbone staff attend meetings to support the governance council, they're there to support the council make decisions and are really avoiding influencing the governance council's decisions. The backbone is also responsive to the hub requests for information and has minimal layers that the hub and the director have to go through to seek approval for decisions that the governance council makes. Minimal layers meaning multiple authorities above you, I guess is what I describe that as. Secondly, clarity of roles and responsibilities, including how the director is hired, how they're supported, evaluated as an employee of a backbone, and accountable to the governance council. And then thirdly, supports the work of the hub and increases community engagement. So supports perhaps through fundraising, and just really supports the work of the hub. Fourth question, what are important evaluation criteria for a regional early learning hub system? Again, heard representation from all required sectors and that the involved representatives are heard and listened to. And that system coordination and community engagement. So an evaluation of this, the coordination and community engagement, that the hub is connecting with sectors, partners, and the community at large. Financial stewardship. The backbone has transparency of the hub budget and delegation of funds, and that there are updated policies and bylaws to reflect the arrangement between the backbone and the hub. And there's verification that the hub resources are invested in community. And then lastly, the strategic plan, that the hub has a strategic plan with goals and deliverables, and that data is used in decision-making. Last question is, we went through the 4 prompts that could lead to a backbone change and the process steps, and asked what questions could come up for them and what feedback do they have. And primarily heard just add more information, add timeframes and more description of the process For example, what does mediation mean? Who decides if that's successful? Who has authority to make decisions if there is a backbone change or an entity uh, prompts for a backbone change? And then the second piece was to identify the cash flow needed if a change were to occur. And then I heard one just like additional consideration, some insight, a recommendation for the hub system is that to have organized, unified meetings where the governance council is present, the backbone present, and the hub director is present. For example, encouraging DELC to hold conferences, trainings, to hear DELC's visions for the hub system and the scope of work for the hubs. So kind of bringing everybody together, which we've heard from you all as well. Okay. Questions? We can pop up any slides that you'd like to see again as well. Thank you. Thanks for that, Kate.
Hi, Heidi. This is Lisa. And of course, I always have to start with a question. And I don't know why my camera's worked all day, but on Zoom, for whatever reason, it's not working. So you'll get the blurry, whatever, black box.
Got it.
I'm curious, and maybe you said it, but I had to exit and then come back, and you maybe said it earlier. I'm curious between the backbone and then the governance conversations, if there was anything that was A, surprising, but then B, were there any sort of in conflict with what you heard from each group? Or maybe conflict is a little bit of a strong word, but maybe not in alignment.
Lisa, I'd probably have to really go back and look at the backbone and I'd have to think about that one just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I would add that the one thing that really stood out to me as something I heard pretty consistently kind of across both of those groups is the desire for clarity of roles, responsibilities. I heard that quite a bit. So I guess that doesn't exactly answer your question, Lisa.
Clarity and role for each party or,
Right.
okay.
Governance council for backbones, hub director, just clarity of roles was something that came up quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful if we spooled up the themes or the questions or the feedback to refresh you, or do you feel like you have a mental landscape of the feedback that we got? Shira.
I just thought that I would share back, as feedback is how we move forward. So at my last and I also think like governance council chairs don't always speak for the entire council, right? But I invited our backbone lead and our governance council chair to share in our last governance council meeting about what their experience was. And because I do believe like we have to come together, and if it wasn't happening on the front end, I'm gonna do it on the back end. And so like just making sure everybody's hearing the same thing. And I will share, it was very interesting hearing both perspectives because as you know, they're both very different people that attended those meetings with also very different experience. One has been around for much longer than I have, and it has gone through several steps that the other one has not, but they did agree on something. And what that was that they both walked away feeling, well, what they said that they felt was DELC's not sharing everything. There's some kind of hidden agenda here. So I just wanted to share that back. So if there's need for damage control to do that, but That was the feedback that in addition to others, and the chair shared, like, you know, her thoughts, and the group that she was in, and you know, some ideas that came, but I do think that that trust part maybe needs a little bit more massaging.
Shira, can I ask if there was any more specificity around what was shared around like what the thinking, what the fear was or what the concern was that might emerge?
Um, no, that was not
Okay,
spoken about.
sure.
I mean, one person said, I don't trust anything that Delk is doing. So they have their own bias that they're coming with. But the other person, who I feel like probably knows Delk a little bit better and certainly knows the hub a little bit better, felt that there was something that was unsaid.
Thanks for
And
that, Shira.
we have shared that, you know, there's some hubs that are in imminent need, and there's others that are not. We are not that, you know, like, and just we're trying to be transparent on our end, but yeah, I think, and my region is known for, you have to really work hard to get the trust in our community, you know that.
Thanks, Shira.
I find the comment that the backbone must hold a mission to serve early childhood interesting. And I would be curious what that means to different organizations,
Yeah.
and what that means to Delk. Because our population is 0 to 6, or we could push it to 0 to 8. And I'm not sure that all organizations think of early childhood as 0 to 6. So it's just a curiosity to me. That one kind of stood out. So it was just interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. I'm recalling back to it. I'm trying to recall even some of the feedback. I know your curiosity is broader than the feedback I heard from governance chairs. I think you know, the intent of what I heard from the governance council chairs was really just that alignment. We're here to serve children. Um, rather than our primary service is something else. That was, I think, the intention of what I was hearing several times.
Yeah, but really young children.
Yeah, right.
And so it's a pretty specific age group. I mean, I think it's just
Mhm.
on my mind because our hub is really strategically narrowing down what we say yes to, even though we have multiple funding streams based on the 0 to 6 population. And so it's just a big focus of ours right now. And so anyway, it just struck me as interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I see your notes in the chat.
I was just gonna throw in, you know, just thinking about where I see that reflected too, you know, in the Early Learning Hub rule set, I think when we're defining a backbone entity, one of the things it says in the rule set is that a backbone entity is an organization that has an aligned mission and the resources to support an early learning hub's vision, mission, and role in advancing the goals of the regional early childhood system. And that talks more about being resourced to support the hub's vision, but I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's also some language that talks about there being some alignment. I want to pull it up to see if it uses the language of early childhood or if it just talks more about the broader alignment. As I don't know if it explicitly calls out in quite the same way early childhood, which would, yeah, be even more specific than having aligned values or vision. So worth looking back on that as well. Thanks, Chris.
Evan, could you speak to your comment about
Why did I know I was going to get called on for that? Well, I think it depends on how you read that comment and how far down the road you take it. Like if you say an organization that serves as a backbone must explicitly, as its primary mission, serve young children 0 through 6 and shall have no other mission, shall have no other master, then they're not going to have skin in the game serving the elder kids that are in that family or dealing with the issues that our youth are confronted with in that family and the family dynamic, which, I know that we talk about. Danny's going to feel like I sound like a broken record right now. Like the child as the unit of intervention, but the child, that is not the way to effectively support the child, right? The family is the unit of intervention. And so I worry about us getting a little myopic around how focused an organization needs to be to fit the backbone, requirement. Large organizations also have lots of priorities, and maybe on the outside you could say they're competing, but internally they have their own dynamics that allow them to accomplish those missions with a fair degree of coherence and focus. So I just think that I'm a little perplexed at wanting to get super in the weeds on like what the backbone's mission is and how many even organizations exist where that's their sole and only focus is the 0 through 6 population.
Yeah, I would agree. It would be a pretty conservative reading, even of what may be intended by this statement to say that it's speaking to having an exclusive mission around 0 to 6 or however you're defining it. And again, it's also, even if it were to say that, that's not to say that we would then take that and incorporate that into an expectation moving forward. Yeah.
Seeing Jessica's chat, I don't think you can serve a child 0 to 6 without serving their family. Children are dependent on their caregivers. Maybe that needs to be called out. And then Maria added in the chat, rules language. A backbone entity is an entity that provides operational and fiscal support to the regional early learning hub. In its current operations, a backbone entity must be demonstrably committed to supporting young children and families. A hub that has provided a stable organizational and operational structure under agreements with and to the satisfaction of the department may submit an application for a grant agreement without a backbone entity. Thanks, Maria. Christy is saying that she agrees with Evan. I'm at a community college. We have aligned missions, but their primary focus is not 0 to 6. That's a great example. And Chris is saying, sure, my curiosity was that the Governance Council thought that the backbone needed to serve early childhood. And Danny shared, I think it's more about values and mission mismatch rather than service delivery.
I would say that's probably fairly Danny's comment. I don't know how you get to that. like in terms of like, and if you're re-RFPing or something, that seems like some real deep work to figure out, suss out like the values in kind of competitive performance, like documentation process. I'm sure Danny has thoughts about that, but seems like it would be tough to do it.
These are the other themes from this question, but please let me know if I should switch slides and we can review the other questions as well.
Maybe Kate, it might be helpful just to kind of we don't have to walk through the slides, but just share some of the other slides just to, if there are any themes that emerge that you might have wonderings about or reflections on.
I have a wondering actually, and as Evan mentioned, I have so many thoughts and I'm really having trouble like in this context getting those out in a way that's coherent. And so I hope that we'll be able to spend a little more time with these things and so I can formulate those for you, Heidi. But on this slide in particular, one of the really big initial priorities for hub backbones was the ability to do this fund floating, right? To cover the hub in times where the DELC contract was, back then, of course, it was ELD, when contracts were delayed or when, things were in process, to keep the work moving forward while administrative processes were what they were. And we've seen over time DELC get better and better about those administrative process timelines, and becoming their own agency and all these things have helped. And so I've seen that become somewhat less of a need for many others. I'm in the interesting place where I have both DELC's processing time and a county government processing time. And in the in-between, my backbone is no longer willing to float funds. And so just wondering, is that an actual requirement and an expectation that DELC has still of backbone organizations? And I think that would be part of this role delineation and all of these things, is that we seem to be less clear at this moment on what the actual requirements of being a backbone are and how you live those out, or what is required of the governance council and how you live that out. And when things are going well, you don't necessarily need to know, as long as all the responsibilities are being met. It's only when there's a problem that it's like, oh, hold on, who was supposed to be holding the bag on that particular thing that's been missed? So I just would also love to hear from DELC, like, where in all the things that we're hearing are the requirements, and how are backbones or governance counselors or whoever being held accountable for those long term? Obviously not today.
I just want to read Shira's comment. I like the idea that governance councils want to be involved in the hiring process, but that would really need to be spelled out because some backbones have inflexible policies. That makes me wonder if the bylaws are a place for that to work out between the two.
I think that, some of the stuff in here is a little bit magical thinking. Like I just don't see ESDs, or I could speak for my ESD, like I mean, their policies are their policies and those are not going to change. You don't like it, move on, kind of, but not really because we still want your indirect rate. So, yeah, so I think like, you know, and I recognize that this was governance council's kind of like, this is our pie in the sky. This is what we think. But I think there needs to be, I think, like Danny said, more accountability and also some more hands-on work from DELC to bring the backbone agencies to really understanding what they're signing for, and with some like spelled out items. You know, my example was that my ESD put us on a spending freeze, which really impacted like how I spent money last year. And so things like that maybe being spelled out, that's not maybe not something they could do, or maybe require special permission or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Shu. I just like another level of detail from what's in the grant agreement. It's sort of that balancing what, not wanting to be too prescriptive, but also wanting to create, boundaries and accountability. I appreciate that. Rod shared at minimum, I think someone from the governance council should be on the interview committee when it comes to hiring. I know there was when I was hired. And Athena wrote, the bylaws can help, and if there is a policy in place, it doesn't mean that the governance can have impact. Chris writes, without a hiring policy in place around the hiring of the director, it takes all of the power away from the governance council. And Chris, do you have a hiring policy in place that was part of your revised bylaws?
I don't remember, but I'm gonna have to look at them. There's gonna need to be one there if there wasn't. But, when we're talking about the governance now, really having a lot of autonomous power in this structure, if they have no say in who you're hiring as the director, it really doesn't seem like they actually have that power. I mean, if your backbone can't even vote on your governance, but your governance has no authority over who you hire as a director, that doesn't feel really balanced.
Feels like that, Chris, like just like the hiring, it's similar with the piece around the budget. Like it's not we don't have to be binary between like all or nothing, right? Like GC has all the authority despite the backbone holding liability and risk for having the contract, and backbone doesn't have unlimited say on what happens. And so what is the meeting point, and what are those tools that DELC can, I don't know where this would live, like in the grant agreement? Like, seems like a weird place to put it. Maybe this is stuff that would have been in the OAR updating. I'm not exactly sure where this stuff would live, but like, saying governance council has to be involved in the hiring process. Again, to what degree, how specific you get. Becky, that's something I guess you could wrestle with. But the budget feels similar, like, they need to be involved and be informed, but I don't think Backbone's gonna just say, okay, here, you make the budget, right? Like, they're not gonna give up that level of autonomy around fund utilization. And I know that we're talking about needing rules for this stuff because for us, like, it's worked through negotiation and allowance of involvement of the GC in some of these processes, but for others, you've got to have some kind of baseline, right? And what is that baseline? What is the language that's going to get us to ensuring we all at least do feels like the minimum level of effort around acceptable level of effort, I guess I should say, around governance involvement in these decisions. Yeah, I see Christy wrote the grant manual.
I love that idea, grant manual for backbones. That's really interesting. Thanks for that, Christy. And then Shira writes, and then there's the evaluation process. The governance council would be closer to this work, but evals are done by backbones. And Athena, are you referring to the backbone grant manual helping with clarity?
Yeah, I know. When we reviewed our contract most recently, one of the wonderings that came up was the hub and the backbone are both listed as the grantee. And so it got really confusing about who was on first and who was on second with different deliverables and different items. So having something that really spells a lot of that out and determines like who in that grant is responsible for what, outside of bylaws, which we have to all update and everything also, and having a clear expectation from the state around that could be really helpful.
Thanks, Athena. Chris, do you want to unmute and share a little bit about your process?
Well, it doesn't say anything in my bylaws. It's in our MOU. So my evaluation, and we had to fight hard on this, is a joint evaluation between my governance chairs and my supervisor at my backbone. And we have written in the MOU that the majority of our positions follow the same structure as our backbone positions, like pay parity and equity across like coordinators, except for the hub director, which is really a little bit more like a CEO or an executive director position and is more aligned with other hub director positions. And then also there might be other positions where we have certified staff that might be THWs or something like that, that might fall outside of other salary requirements. And then I was just trying to see, like, I couldn't like quickly find like the hiring process. I'm not 100% sure that we got it in here. We might have to do that in MOU 2.0. But my evaluation is, yeah, between backbone and governance.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, maybe with our remaining time, we can talk a little bit about next steps and pop up the slide that has the timeline for where we're headed, unless there's anything else that you all want to raise. All right. So the goal right now is to bring back to you some backbone change processes and then selection criteria at the April meeting, and to get your feedback directly on some of those processes for the backbone change as well as selection criteria. And with May happening, there's no meeting due to your hub gathering. So in June, we'll bring back again present the hub evaluation criteria and backbone change processes for the June meeting and collect your feedback, your hub director feedback as well. So the goal is to kind of have get to some clarity in June, bringing back to you some of these processes in April and June. And feel free to add anything, Becky, Nancy, and Maria, if I've missed anything. Yeah, Shira, I see your hand there.
Thanks, Heidi. Is there time in this where we're all coming together or no?
Great question. Uh, Becky, Maria, or Nancy, do you have thoughts about that?
Shira, when you say all, do you mean, tell me who you mean?
I mean, maybe sharing out your information with backbones and governance councils, whether
Okay,
it's
what I
like
thought.
what I think that we've talked about this a couple of times, and
Yeah.
it sounds like it came up in this as well. Maybe it's, smaller groups, but also like it's virtual. There's no reason why like we couldn't have a whole thing with all of us, it seems like. I don't know.
No, I think that's a great idea and something we can talk about with Becky and Heidi and Maria. I like the idea of circling back so everybody knows kind of where we landed and why.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'm sharing back with governance councils and backbones the themes. I'll be sure to email you all when that goes out. However, I think what you're suggesting is we have an opportunity for communication, not just an email. We have an opportunity to come together.
Yeah, I mean, I really, I think the sooner that we come all together, the
Right.
more that will decrease some of that mistrust that maybe it's just my area and we're super distrustful. But either way, like then just bring us three together. I don't know. I think that like that needs to be addressed. And I think the sooner you do that, the better. And just in the spirit of reducing triangulation, and I mean, it seems like we've all had a chance to give our feedback. Why not share it all out together? And maybe, and when I say why not, I don't mean rhetorically. Like when I worked in prison, somebody once told me I was complaining about something the warden was doing, and somebody told me, Shira, there's a reason why she's the warden and you're not. And that's right. I would be opening up the doors, letting all the inmates go home to their mamas and, see their families. So there's a reason why I don't work at Delk. And so when I ask that, like I'm truly curious, like why wouldn't we come together?
Thanks, Shira. Those are really good questions. Abby shares, my governance chair appreciated the opportunity to get to know other governance chairs. I think there are a lot of silos and the walls get knocked down a little when, excuse me, when we bring people together. And then Danny shares, together can be really great or really conflicted. Sorry. It's a good point.
Okay. My time with you all, I think, is up. Yeah. And Becky, it sounds like you're not able to unmute. So yes, for some reason today, huh? All right. So Nancy and Maria, I'll turn it back over to you. And of course, I'm always feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can do to be supportive to y'all in this space.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I wonder if while we have everyone here, we could just spend a few minutes sharing a little bit more about this great idea of a manual for the backbone. Is that something that folks in this space could spend, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes on? I think we have the time, and it would really be beneficial to Maria and I if we heard your feedback.
Was right.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm thinking we have our grant manual currently and wanting to know what pieces would be helpful to have in addition to for a backbone perspective, in addition to what we already have in our grant manual currently.
Might also be something that people want to mull over, and Marie and I can send out one of our forms to get everyone thinking and sharing their information. But I'm seeing Shira saying, I think a broad do's and don'ts would be helpful. Do's and don'ts are the best. Yes, I agree.
Okay, so this is gonna sound horrible. I'm just laying that out there to start with. Because I like our backbone. We've worked really hard over the last year. We've made a lot of inroads. Things are going really well. But honestly, for the life of me, I can't figure out why any organization would want to be a backbone. And so I just don't know what we would put in there. It's like, here, come and support this organization and pay all their payroll and do all this work for them. And this is going to be really great. And I mean, I don't know what the benefits are for them. I mean, you know, they make indirect and you know, we pay them for their services, but I don't know what the selling feature on this is. So I don't know what you would put in a manual. And so
Yeah.
that's maybe somebody else has a better idea.
Well, I'm seeing in the chat, Lisa is saying, I personally don't think starting with a manual at this time would be effective. And Christy shared, I tossed out the idea, but I would need to read through the current manual with that specific lens. And then Rod's like, Chris, shh, I don't want my backbone to hear you. Oh. Christy, are you saying you currently have a grant manual for backbones?
No, the Hub grant manual and looking at it to see what's in there and what it might be missing that would be specific to backbone organizations. It was just, and all the things we were talking about and clarity around roles and responsibilities. It's like, well, we make manuals and toolkits for everything. Why not give backbone organizations one that, you know, they get left out of that piece.
Right. Thank you.
And I
We
wonder
could
if
just
it can
ask
be.
AI.
Yeah, right. I wonder if it's also a piece where maybe it's also just having a space where we could walk through that manual with the backbone representatives as well, and maybe just having like a supplemental one pager that would encompass some of those do's and don'ts, but maybe utilizing what we already have, but having a space where we can really just bring in those backbone representatives to walk through that current manual. But yes, please feel free to reach out if you guys think of other additional things, and we could also bring this into our March check-ins with you all as well. Rod, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Maria, I like what you just said because it fed right into what I was going to say. But so maybe a one page or supplemental, but our backbones have a grants manual. I mean, it's the Hub grant manual that we have. They're the grantee. They're responsible to make sure all those things happen. So guess I'm not, don't really see the need for a separate manual. You know, they hire us to make sure those things happen, but ultimately they're the grantee. They have to, you know, adhere to what's in that grants manual fiscally and everything else. I say fiscally because Carla just turned her camera on, so I wanted to impress her.
Thank you, Rod. Renee?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Rod, and I'm just thinking that we would not need Delk to be prescriptive with some things like how hub directors are hired. There might be regional differences in opinion about that. And so it feels like maybe that would be an MOU would be an important tool for those, like, how do we operationalize this? Which is different than just kind of looking at the new rule set and people either liking or not liking what they're reading, but really how do we do this work together? And it just feels like an MOU between governance council chairs, backbone, hub director would be, and it's what I'm working toward in my region. I think it'd be a good next step.
Marissa, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I was just going to reiterate what others said, particularly Chris. You know, our ESD manages hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't really feel like they need another grant manual for a $1 million grant. You know, they are the experts. I think that we could increase communication, you know, but I think you guys have already done a better job with that, from what I've seen. But I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of backbone should do this, backbone should do that. But at least in my backbone, we are one small piece of a really big puzzle. And we do feel really supported by our business office and superintendent and CFO.
I'm seeing Danny's comment about MOUs and they are not enforceable. Thank you, Danny. I think we can wrap this up unless anyone has any other comments or questions for Heidi or for us. We really appreciate the conversation. Next on the agenda, Marie and I have just a quick update on the spring gathering. And Kate, I'm wondering if you could pull those slides up. Okay, we wanted to start out with just a review of the logistics. The spring gathering starts Wednesday, check-in at 12:30. We adjourn at 5, and it ends, the second day is Thursday, April 30th. Starts at 9:15 and we wrap up at 5 p.m. The venue for the spring gathering is the Pendleton Center for the Arts. We have a hotel block for hub directors at the Best Western Pendleton. And just to clarify, the hubs pay for their rooms. As far as meals and refreshments, Delk pays for, we cover morning and afternoon refreshments, and participants are responsible for their meals and the associated costs for that. Next slide. And for the participants, just in general, high level, hub directors, of course, and with Delk, it'll be the hub team, members of our leadership team at Delk, our data team will be there, and tribal affairs, as well as early learning council members. We're really excited about the group that's forming. We don't have not every participant is confirmed yet, but we're really excited about what's developing. And then we just want to give you a quick update on the spring gathering survey. Thank you to the 11 of you who completed the survey. We really appreciate that. One of the questions was about if we should make time in the agenda for networking, and 100% of the participants said yes, that's important to them. So we will definitely honor that. We asked about roundtable discussion topics. I think we offered 5. in the drop down that you could select, and you could select as many as you wanted. And there was also an other. The top three were hub staffing and blending and braiding funds, identifying and applying for grants, and governance council meeting structures and hub director prep, including agendas and investment updates. In addition, around other, we had supporting inclusion as an interest, what other hub projects and investments are happening, new ideas, bright spots, what our hubs struggle and strategies, what is working, what is not working. And it seems like some of those important topics could be part of our peer learning, and it might be integrated into our roundtable discussions.
Next slide. I think we wanted to just give back a little bit of what we heard for what you were hoping to hear from leadership. We heard that you're wanting to hear the statewide priorities and how initiatives are being sequenced, funding outlook and anticipated changes, the review process. You're wanting to hear about the funding formula, underspending, coordinated enrollment, an overview of short session, how decisions are made when trade-offs are required, what support hubs can expect in the coming year, alignment between state expectations and hub capacity, and how is success measured. Next slide. As for ELC, you're hoping to hear current council priorities. How are we doing as a state? An update on Raise Up Oregon, how hub input informs council decisions, and opportunities for stronger two-way communication. Next slide, please. And for our tribal affairs team, you're hoping to hear expectations for regional collaboration, concern about the pressure to deepen collaboration when tribe prefers lighter touch. Examples could include sitting on advisory groups together. You're wanting to hear guidance on relationship building with tribal partners, including examples of best practices, clarification of roles and consultation processes, and then opportunities for shared learning.
Feedback for the data team included clear expectations about required reporting versus optional data. You wanted to hear about data tools that support decision-making at the regional level, timelines for dashboard updates and system improvements, technical assistance that matches local capacity, how to set measurable objectives in community-based work, collecting impact statements to align with data, what data is DELC collecting overall and what is missing and how is it used, how DELC aligns data from multiple programs, and are there ways to improve data sharing and ways to incorporate family experience and community context alongside quantitative metrics. And additional feedback, we heard that you were interested in hub innovations and partnerships using Title 4B2 funds, professional development and use of continuing education units, EI, ECSE, and preschool promise alignment. And again, how are hubs using data? Who analyzes the data at the hub level? And how do hubs pay for this position?
As for next steps, we're going to be connecting internally with our teams to share the feedback that we heard from the survey. We may reach out to folks for further clarification. And we wanted to emphasize that we're still open to feedback from you all. Feel free to utilize our March check-in meetings to share additional feedback that you have for the spring gathering, or feel free to reach out to Nancy and I. And then we will be sharing a final agenda in the coming weeks.
With a couple of minutes that we have left, does anyone have any questions or comments about the spring gathering? Well, we're really looking forward to that and seeing folks in real life. Very exciting. We will wrap up now. We're just about at time, and I will drop the hub meeting exit survey in the chat. We always want to hear from you. And just thanks for great participation as always, and feedback and insights. We appreciate this time with you all. And Marie and I will stick around after the meeting if anyone has any questions. Thank you.